Picture this. You are sitting at the DMV.
Oh boy.
Right. You're in one of those rigid, molded plastic chairs. The fluorescent lights are just buzzing overhead, and you are staring blankly at the red digital numbers on the wall, just waiting for your ticket to be called.
Yeah, the universal human experience of absolute suspended animation.
Right out of the gate, you know exactly what I mean. You are physically present in the room, but mentally you have completely powered down.
Right.
You're just a passive receptacle for whatever is supposed to happen next. And I want to start there today for a very specific reason. Because whether you consider yourself deeply religious or maybe spiritual but not religious, or perhaps you're just a listener who is intensely curious about the hidden machinery of the human mind, we almost universally carry around this preconceived notion of what prayer actually looks like.
Oh, absolutely we do.
We tend to picture someone sitting perfectly still, totally passive, maybe silently reciting a few words, but essentially just sitting in a spiritual waiting room.
Yeah, we view it as this completely inactive state. I mean, the assumption is that the person is just waiting for some profound feeling to wash over them, or waiting for an answer to drop from the sky, or, let's be honest, just waiting for the meditation timer on their phone to go off so they can get back to their actual life.
Right, exactly. But today, we are pulling apart a single, deeply fascinating source that completely shatters that DMV image. On the desk today, we have a document titled Prayer of the Whole Person, and it's written by Friar John Baptist.
And what makes his perspective so vital here is that he isn't just a friar. He is also a pastoral clinical counselor.
Which changes everything. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle that passive idea of prayer. We are going to explore how this text redefines prayer as an intensely active, neurologically demanding experience that gathers up your mind, your physical body, and honestly, your absolute messiest human realities.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
We are moving away from this fuzzy assumption that prayer is just talking at the ceiling, and we are going to look at the stark physical reality of what is actually happening inside the human brain when someone engages in this practice.
And I love that the source doesn't just start with abstract theology to do that. Like, Friar John Baptist grounds his argument in hard science. Specifically, we're looking at functional brain imaging.
Right, he brings in this pivotal 2003 study conducted by neuroscientist Andrew Newberg. And Newberg and his team, they basically wanted to look under the hood.
Yeah.
They wanted to see the physical brain states of people engaged in deep contemplative prayer. So for their subjects, they brought in experienced Franciscan nuns.
Which honestly makes perfect sense if you're designing this study. Like, if you want to study the mechanics of a perfect golf swing, you don't bring in someone who plays mini golf once a year.
Exactly.
You bring in a pro. And these nuns are essentially the elite marathon runners of the contemplative world.
They really are. I mean, they have logged thousands of hours in this specific mental state. So the researchers placed these nuns in brain scanners and had them engage in their customary contemplative prayer.
Okay, so what did that actually look like?
Well, the specific method they used was the inward, completely silent repetition of a sacred phrase. No speaking out loud, just total internal focus. And while they did this, the scientists tracked the blood flow in their brains.
Let's break down the mechanism there for a second, because I think that's crucial. Like, why blood flow?
Well, the human brain is a massive resource hog.
Right.
When neurons in a specific region start firing rapidly, they demand more oxygen and more glucose to just keep functioning. So the body responds by dilating the blood vessels in that specific area to deliver the fuel.
So if a brain region lights up with increased blood flow, it's because machinery there is working incredibly hard.
Exactly. And the imaging results were really striking. When the nuns were engaged in this silent, inward prayer, the blood flow didn't just passively wash evenly over the brain as if they were taking a nap.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it dramatically increased in very specific areas. Most notably, the frontal lobes, which handle focused attention, and the language centers of the brain.
Now, Friar John Baptist does include a necessary caveat in the text, and we definitely need to be clear about it. This was a small preliminary study.
Right.
This 2003 data set doesn't pretend to definitively explain every single mystical experience across all of human history.
No, it's a specific slice of neurological data. It's not the definitive map of the soul.
But even as a slice of data, the implications are just wild. I mean, let's think about that language center activation. These nuns are sitting in absolute silence. They aren't moving their lips.
No vocal cord vibration at all.
Right, yet the language center of the brain is demanding a massive surge of blood.
What's fascinating here is that science is essentially validating what mystics have reported feeling in their bodies for centuries. Because inner speech still requires heavy neurological lifting.
Right.
Even when you repeat a word silently to yourself, your brain is actively engaging the motor planning areas to mentally form those words. And meanwhile, your frontal lobes are simultaneously working to forcefully block out the constant stream of other random thoughts trying to enter your consciousness.
So it's basically like going to the gym. We look at someone sitting in silent contemplation and we assume they're doing the mental equivalent of, I don't know, sinking into the couch to watch television.
Yeah, exactly.
But neurologically speaking, they're actively doing highly targeted, heavyweight reps for their attention and language centers.
Yes. Directing your attention toward the divine is not a passive mental drift. It is a highly active, metabolically expensive state. I mean, your brain's burning real physical energy to concentrate, to recall those sacred words, and to rigorously hold that attention.
But, knowing this science actually creates a huge psychological hurdle for me. Well, if directing my attention requires that much metabolic energy and intense neurological focus in the moment, I'd burn out in 5 minutes. I mean, I know my own brain. I can't just drop into a heavy mental workout of pure, unbroken focus out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, you'd pull a mental hamstring almost immediately.
Yes. You sit down, you try to focus, and within 30 seconds you're thinking about what you're having for dinner or if you left the oven on. So how does anyone actually build the capacity for this?
Well, Friar John Baptist anticipates that exact problem. And to answer it, he transitions us from modern brain imaging to ancient spiritual psychology.
Yeah.
He brings in the teachings of John Cassian, who was a monk and theologian who drew on the wisdom of the Desert Fathers.
Okay, so for the listener who might not be familiar with that era, we're talking about early Christian monks from the 3rd and 4th centuries, right?
Right.
The ones who literally left the chaotic cities of the Roman Empire and went out into the harsh Egyptian desert.
Yeah, their goal was to escape the noise of the world, to focus entirely on spiritual living. But what they discovered, and what made them some of history's earliest and sharpest psychologists, really, is that when you remove all external stimulation, your internal noise gets deafeningly loud.
Wow, yeah.
Sitting in the silent desert, they were forced to confront the chaotic, unfiltered reality of human thoughts.
And they didn't have smartphones to distract them from their own anxieties either.
Exactly. They had to sit with it. They observed the mind with clinical precision, and from centuries of this intense collective experience, Cassian taught something profound. He said, you cannot treat prayer as a brief, isolated religious exercise.
Yeah.
You can't just flip a switch from normal life to holy focus. Instead, he taught that our entire way of living prepares us to pray.
So if there's no firewall between my daily life and my spiritual life, are you saying whatever I'm doing at 2 p.m. is actively wiring my brain for how I'm going to pray at 8 p.m.?
That is Cassian's core insight. Whatever fills our minds, whatever shapes our habits, and whatever moves our hearts during the regular hours of the day, inevitably and unavoidably enters our prayer. The mind simply brings what it has gathered.
Okay, I have to push back on this, because that sounds terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah, think about a normal Tuesday for the person listening to this deep dive right now. You wake up, you grab your phone, and you are immediately bombarded by a dozen stressful emails.
Oh, absolutely.
Then you have a chaotic commute with people cutting you off in traffic. You get to work, you're juggling deadlines, you're getting pinged by Slack messages, and in the back of your mind, you're worrying about a medical bill.
A very modern, very real Tuesday.
Right. So if John Cassian is right, and all of that mental clutter inevitably enters our prayer, doesn't that mean our prayer is just totally ruined? I mean, if my brain is doing reps for anxiety and fragmentation for 14 hours a day, how on earth am I supposed to offer that up without just spiraling into a panic attack the second I try to sit in silence?
It feels like a trap, doesn't it?
It feels like we're bringing garbage into a sanctuary.
It is a very valid anxiety, but Cassian's insight isn't meant to be a condemnation. He's really just mapping the psychological mechanisms so that you understand what is happening. I mean, the Desert Fathers knew human psychology perfectly.
Because they lived it.
Right. They knew the brain adapts to what it does most frequently. You can't train your brain to be anxious and distracted all day and then expect it to magically produce profound monastic stillness on command. Cassian is basically reassuring you. He's saying your distractions aren't a sign that you are uniquely broken or bad at praying. They are simply the natural echo of your daily environment.
So if we can't escape that loud, messy echo of our daily lives and we can't magically turn it off, he must be suggesting we somehow use it.
And that brings us to what might be the most powerful, liberating thesis in Friar John Baptist's entire document. He builds directly on this anxiety about bringing a messy mind to prayer.
Yeah, he writes this profound line, and it completely stopped me in my tracks when I read it. He says, prayer, then, is not an escape from our humanity. It is the offering of our humanity.
It completely inverts what we think we're supposed to be doing.
Here's where it gets really interesting,
Mhm.
because think about how we usually handle this. We often treat spiritual practices like having a fancy guest over to our house,
I
right?
don't like this.
Like the doorbell rings and we frantically shove all our mess into the closet and present this fake, perfectly clean house. We want to look perfectly peaceful, perfectly holy, perfectly put together. We are terrified of letting anyone, even the divine, see our actual mess.
Because we think the mess invalidates the practice. We think the struggle means we're failing.
Exactly. But what Friar John Baptist is saying is that we are supposed to invite the guest directly into the mess. The document explicitly says we are meant to bring our distracted thoughts. We are supposed to bring our physically tired, aching bodies. We bring the fears about the medical bills, the annoyance from the traffic jam, along with our gratitude and our loves.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where Friar John Baptist's background as a pastoral clinical counselor really shines through. Because in clinical psychology, there is a well-understood phenomenon.
What's that?
Whatever you try to actively repress or push out of your mind usually comes back with twice the force.
Oh, the classic pink elephant thing.
Exactly. If you sit down to pray and spend all your mental energy aggressively trying to banish your anxiety about work, you are ironically focusing entirely on your anxiety.
You are feeding the monster by fighting it.
But by shifting the framework to the offering of our humanity, you integrate the distraction. It removes the immense pressure of performing a perfect, pristine prayer. If your mind wanders to an argument you had with a coworker, you don't panic and think, oh no, I've ruined the holy moment.
You just accept it.
Right, you accept that you are an exhausted, frustrated human being, and you offer that specific frustration as the material of the prayer. Your actual flawed, currently distracted condition isn't an obstacle to the prayer, it is the prayer.
Wow. Because if we follow that logic all the way down, the boundary between our human lives and our spiritual lives eventually just vanishes entirely.
The compartmentalization totally collapses.
Exactly. And to illustrate this, the source brings in a historical anecdote about St. Francis of Assisi. There is this quote from Thomas of Celano, who was a contemporary of Francis and wrote his early biographies. Thomas was observing how Francis lived, and he recorded this incredibly powerful observation. He wrote that Francis was not so much praying as becoming totally prayer.
Becoming totally prayer. That is a massive conceptual leap from where we started.
It really is. It's the ultimate destination of this entire text. It means prayer has moved way beyond particular words you say with your lips, and way beyond specific scheduled moments on the calendar where you sit quietly in a room.
Yeah. Friar John Baptist identifies this as the deeper, ultimate invitation. The goal of all of this, the neurological focus, the awareness of our habits, the radical acceptance of our messy humanity, it isn't just to make us better at saying prayers. The invitation is to let prayer completely transform how you think, how you speak, how you work, how you suffer, and how you love. Little by little, the action of your life itself becomes the prayer.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, tomorrow morning? I want to make sure we really ground this before we wrap up. Help me paint a vivid picture of this, because it sounds beautiful and poetic on paper, but practically speaking, what does it mean for working or suffering to literally become a prayer based on everything we've just learned?
Okay, let's use a real example.
Yeah, take a mundane task, formatting a massive, boring spreadsheet at 9 a.m. How does that become a prayer?
Well, it requires us to synthesize the three big concepts we've explored today.
Okay.
First, think back to the nuns in the 2003 neuroscience study. What made their silent sitting an act of prayer? It was their directed intention. They were burning metabolic energy to actively focus their attention on the divine.
Right, the mental heavy lifting.
Second, combine that with John Cassian's wisdom that your daily habits form your mind. And third, bring in Friar John Baptist's clinical rule that you must offer your raw, messy humanity rather than repressing it.
Okay, I have all three pieces on the board. Intention, habit, and offering the mess.
Right. So when you put them together, here's what happens to your spreadsheet. You sit down at your desk at 9 a.m. You feel the frustration of the boring task. You feel the tiredness behind your eyes. Your mind wants to wander to a dozen other tabs.
A very familiar feeling.
Instead of wishing you were in a quiet monastery so you could do some real praying, you accept the reality of the office. You take the friction of that moment, the boredom, the physical tiredness, and you internally offer that exact messy reality up with focused intention.
Oh, wow. So you direct your attention through the medium of the Excel document.
Yes, when you perform that difficult daily work, but frame it as an intentional offering of your human limitations, that action carries the exact same spiritual and neurological weight as sitting in silent contemplation.
That is wild to think about.
The difficult work, when offered intentionally, is you becoming the prayer, just like St. Francis. You are no longer stepping out of your life to pray. Your life, with all its annoying friction, becomes the engine.
That is a completely paradigm-shifting way to look at the daily grind. We've gone on quite the journey in this deep dive.
We really have.
I mean, we started with a 2003 neurological study measuring how cerebral blood flow spikes when we focus our attention. We traveled back to the blistering Egyptian desert to understand how the early monks mapped the chaotic psychology of human habits. And we wove it all through the clinical insights of a modern pastoral counselor, arriving finally at the radical lived experience of St. Francis of Assisi.
Spanning neuroscience, ancient history, and clinical psychology, but all pointing toward the exact same underlying mechanism.
And the core takeaway, the thread tying this entire source document together, is that prayer is not a passive waiting game. It's not something you just say with your lips while you wait for your number to be called at the DMV of life.
Definitely not.
It is the total, highly active gathering up of your mind, your physical energy, your focused attention, and your gloriously messy, unfiltered humanity.
This raises an important question, though. A final thought to leave you with, derived directly from the logic of John Cassian that we discussed earlier.
Oh, this here.
If, as Cassian diagnosed centuries ago, the brain adapts to what it does most frequently, if what shapes our habits and fills our minds inevitably becomes our prayer, take an honest look at your day today. Look at the media you have consumed, the anxieties you have fed, or the things you have fiercely focused your attention on. Without even using words, without ever stepping foot in a sanctuary or sitting on a meditation cushion, what is the silent prayer that your daily habits are writing right now?
Wow. That is a brilliant and slightly intimidating thought to chew on as you go about the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Because it turns out the waiting room is an illusion. You are never just passively killing time.
No.
The whole thing, every mundane, messy, chaotic minute of your routine is the main event. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the true nature of prayer, the brain, and the human condition. Keep paying attention out there, and we'll catch you next time.